Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the Lycurgus Cup, Rome's nanotechnology that shouldn't exist. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. On the fourth floor of the British Museum in London, in a case in the Roman collection, sits an object so extraordinary that materials scientists still regard it as one of the most remarkable manufactured artifacts ever studied. The Lycurgus Cup is a Roman glass vessel made in the 4th century AD. It looks green. Hold a light source behind it, and it turns blood red. This dichroic shift, from green to ruby in reflected and transmitted light, is produced by something the Romans should not have been able to create. When British Museum researchers applied electron microscopy to the cup in 1990, they found that the glass contains gold and silver nanoparticles, approximately 70 nanometers in diameter, particles so precisely sized that they interact with light at different wavelengths, depending on angle and direction of illumination. The technology of deliberately manufacturing nanoparticles was not developed by modern science until 1959. This is not a loose analogy. The physical mechanism producing the color change in the Lycurgus Cup is the same plasmon resonance effect that modern nanotechnology laboratories exploit to build chemical sensors, medical diagnostic devices, and optical filters. The Romans did it. They may not have understood why it worked, but they produced a result that took human science another 1,600 years to replicate, and the manufacturing secret was completely lost. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the wider world of ancient technological anomalies, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Ancient technical knowledge is remarkably vulnerable. It lives in the hands of craftsmen, in the minds of engineers, in the institutional memory of workshops and guilds. When a civilization collapses through invasion, plague, climate change, or internal conflict, that knowledge can vanish within a single generation. There is no guarantee that what is written down will be preserved, and much ancient knowledge was never written down at all. It was transmitted orally, apprentice to master, in a chain that a single catastrophe could permanently sever. This vulnerability helps explain what might otherwise seem impossible, that the ancient world possessed capabilities we did not recover for centuries or millennia. The Romans knew how to make self-healing concrete by mixing volcanic ash with seawater. When the empire fell, the recipe was forgotten. Medieval European builders worked with inferior materials for over 1,000 years before the technique was rediscovered through analysis of surviving Roman structures. The knowledge did not disappear because it was suppressed or hidden. It simply died with the people who held it. Apply this principle more broadly, and the anomalies of the ancient world become less mysterious, not in the sense of being explained, but in the sense of being plausible. If Rome could lose a concrete formula for a millennium, what else might have been lost? What might advanced cultures in earlier epochs have discovered and then lost, leaving only fragmentary traces, a strange artifact here, a suggestive diagram there, that later generations would struggle to interpret? This is the question at the heart of every anomalous discovery from the ancient world. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades, and patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter, the core evidence surrounding the Lycurgus Cup. Rome's nanotechnology that shouldn't exist is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The Lycurgus Cup was manufactured in the Roman Empire during the 4th century AD, most likely in Rome or Alexandria. The vessel stands approximately 16.5 centimeters tall and is carved from a single piece of dichroic glass using cage cup technique, in which an outer decorative shell is undercut, so it connects to the inner vessel only at narrow junctions. The carved scene depicts the Thracian king Lycurgus being entangled in the vine of Dionysus, a standard Roman mythological subject rendered in unusually fine detail. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes, but as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly, it is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the cup was acquired by the British Museum in 1958 from the collection of Lord Rothschild. In 1990, museum researchers Ian Freestone and Michael Bimson applied electron microscopy to a tiny sample of the glass and identified particles of gold and silver alloy dispersed throughout the material at sizes of approximately 70 nanometers in diameter, placing them squarely in the nanoscale range, well below the threshold of visibility under conventional optical microscopy. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. The nanoparticles in the Lycurgus Cup glass are composed of an alloy approximately 70% gold and 30% silver, with trace copper. At this size and composition, the particles interact with light through localized surface plasmon resonance, absorbing and scattering specific light wavelengths. Green wavelengths scatter back toward the viewer in reflected light, while red wavelengths pass through in transmitted light, producing the dramatic dichroic color shift. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, the Lycurgus Cup is the only fully intact example of a Roman cage cup that also possesses strong dichroic optical properties. Fragments of other dichroic Roman glass have been identified in museum collections and excavations, suggesting the technique was known in multiple workshops. But none of these fragments combines the cage cup format with the dichroic effect in a complete vessel. The cup's survival, intact over 17 centuries, is itself remarkable, as cage cups are inherently fragile due to their undercut construction. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of, in 2013, a research team at the University of Illinois demonstrated that nanoparticles arranged in patterns inspired by the Lycurgus Cup could detect the presence of different liquids at sensitivity levels approximately 100 times greater than standard commercial sensors. The researchers filled tiny holes in nanoparticle-embedded material with various liquids and observed corresponding color shifts, proposing that ancient Roman glassmakers had inadvertently created a functional nanotechnology platform 17 centuries before the term existed. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: no surviving Roman text, technical manual, or workshop record describes the process by which dichroic glass containing nanoparticles was manufactured. Pliny the Elder devoted considerable attention to glassmaking technology in his Natural History of 77 AD, but does not mention dichroic effects or any technique that could produce them. The manufacturing knowledge was apparently transmitted through workshop practice rather than written record, and was comprehensively lost when the tradition died out. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological errors. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Lycurgus Cup, Rome's nanotechnology that shouldn't exist. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that Freestone and Bimson proposed in their 1990 analysis that the nanoparticles were deliberately introduced into the glass through a colloidal gold and silver solution added to the melt. In this interpretation, Roman glassmakers had discovered that adding specific quantities of dissolved precious metals produced distinctive optical effects, and refined the technique through systematic experimentation to achieve the precise particle size responsible for the dichroic shift. The objection is that no written record of this process exists anywhere in Roman technical literature. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence. But it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the alternative mainstream explanation holds that the nanoparticle composition resulted from accidental contamination of a glass batch with dissolved gold and silver, possibly from gold ore or silver-working residues in a shared workshop environment. In this reading, the glassmaker observed the unusual optical effect produced by the contaminated batch and deliberately preserved and reproduced it without understanding the underlying cause. Repetition could produce consistent results without any theoretical understanding of nanotechnology or plasmon resonance. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that a third position holds that the Lycurgus Cup represents a single exceptional workshop achievement rather than a documented or widely shared technique. The rarity of comparable dichroic glass in the Roman record, only fragments, no intact vessels, suggests a small-scale specialist tradition never transmitted beyond a single craftsman or family. The complete loss of the technique is more easily explained by the death of one specialist than by the collapse of a broad Roman industrial knowledge base. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Lycurgus Cup, Rome's nanotechnology that shouldn't exist, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes the 1990 electron microscopy study by Freestone and Bimson at the British Museum is the definitive scientific characterization of the Lycurgus Cup. Their analysis identified the gold-silver nanoparticles, measured their size distribution, and confirmed the plasmon resonance mechanism responsible for the dichroic effect. The study has been replicated by independent researchers using more advanced electron microscopy techniques, and the results have been consistently confirmed. The existence of the nanoparticles and their optical properties are not disputed by any researcher. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented. The 2013 University of Illinois study demonstrated practical applications for nanoparticle arrays with optical properties modeled on those of the Lycurgus Cup glass. The researchers showed that such arrays could detect dissolved salts, oil, and other liquids through color shifts, with sensitivity exceeding commercial sensors by 2 orders of magnitude. The paper attracted significant attention by treating an ancient Roman artifact as a direct conceptual forerunner of cutting-edge biosensor technology, prompting renewed scientific interest in Roman glassmaking techniques. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed museum collections in Europe and North America contain fragments of Roman glass with weakly dichroic properties, consistent with accidental nanoparticle formation during manufacture. None is as strongly dichroic as the Lycurgus Cup, none survives as an intact vessel, and none has been confirmed to contain nanoparticles of the same size and density. The cup is scientifically unique, and the degree of apparent control over particle size it represents has not been observed in any other known piece of ancient glass. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Lycurgus Cup, Rome's nanotechnology that shouldn't exist. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The Lycurgus Cup is displayed in the Roman collection of the British Museum and is acknowledged as one of its most technically remarkable objects. Freestone's 1990 analysis remains the standard scientific reference. The 2013 University of Illinois study opened a new dimension of interest by proposing that the Roman technique could inspire modern nanosensor design, making the cup relevant to contemporary materials science rather than merely historical curiosity. Whether the nanoparticle composition was intentional or accidental remains actively debated. The manufacturing secret was unambiguously lost. No comparable dichroic technique reappears in any documented European or Middle Eastern glassmaking tradition until the modern scientific understanding of colloidal gold was established in the 19th century by Michael Faraday, who produced nanoparticle gold solutions entirely independently and with full theoretical understanding of what he was doing. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Lycurgus Cup, Rome's nanotechnology that shouldn't exist, from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Lycurgus Cup ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process, and the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.